I grew up kind of all over in the beginning. I was born in California, so born in a little place called Brawley, California. We lived in San Diego for a couple of years before my mom and I, being a single mom, we moved to Arkansas where my grandfather was. He owned a small farm out there, and he kind of watched me while my mom worked quite a bit. So I grew up in that single parent sort of atmosphere for a while until my mom met my stepdad. He was in the Air Force at the time, stationed down there in Jacksonville. Then after he got out, we moved here to Colorado. I think I was about 9, 10, in that range. And then grew up in North Glen first for a year. Then we moved to Wyoming. My dad was in the Guard when he switched over. We lived in Cheyenne for a couple of years, and then we moved back here, lived in Thornton for middle school time frame, and then we moved to Broomfield, went to high school there all 4 years, went to North Glen High School, and then went to Legacy, was the first graduating class of Legacy back in 2003, and then from there joined the military. So kind of childhood based, kind of grew up kind of all over, but primarily here is what I consider home, so here in Colorado. So 99, 2000, I went into high school. First year I was at North Glen High School, and at that time they were building Legacy. So I finished 3 years there, first graduating class. And then I did all right in school, wasn't that great of a student. Didn't really have a lot going for me at that time. Didn't have a good grades to go to college with a scholarship or anything like that. I don't think my parents could really afford college at that time, and I really didn't want to go into debt. On top of that, I wanted to travel the world, and I've always kind of fantasized about going into the military, and it was either going into the Marines or the Air Force. And looking at my family history, my grandfather was in the Navy for 35 years. My other grandfather was in the Navy as well, the Navy, doing certain things. I had two uncles who were in the Army, and my dad was in the Air Force. And talking with my dad, he kind of pushed me into the Air Force. He said he might like that better. He had more chances to travel to better places rather than going, deployments and stuff like that. So I listened to what he said, kind of took his advice. And then when I graduated from high school, like I said, I didn't really have enough options to go into college. So the military was my really only thought at that time. So I signed up right after graduation, I think in June, and I was in what's called the Delayed Entry Program, the DEP program. And then I left in September of 2003 to go into basic training. Then from there, kind of after basic, I went to a place called Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi. Did some electronic principles course there after a while, but I wasn't really into that kind of atmosphere at that time. So I got reclassed into supply. And the reason I went into supply is I asked him, one, what was the shortest tech school, because doing electronic principles for telephone communications was kind of a long process, and I didn't want to be in that. I wanted to be in active duty, was my mindset at that time, and travel. So they said supply was a great career field to go into. Really, you can go anywhere. Your options to go to any base is open, and you can kind of do these specialty jobs to go along with that, like being attached to aircraft units and stuff like that. So I took that option, went back to San Antonio. It's also where basic training was. Did, I think, 6 to 7 weeks there. And then my first duty station was in Ramstein Air Base in Germany. Spent 2 years there. I was attached with the C-130 unit, so we did all of their mobile packaging, stuff like that. Any parts that they need, we would grab for them. And then anytime they would deploy or go anywhere with those aircrafts, we would tag along with them, kind of like a mobile supply unit sort of thing. After that, I got orders to New Mexico, to Holloman Air Force Base. I was attached initially to a F-117 fighter group. That was a stealth bomber at the time. And halfway through my tour there, I was there for about 4.5 years. They retired that aircraft. We actually took their last deployment to Korea for 6 months. Had some fun times in Hawaii at the time as well. But when we got back, we retired that aircraft and got the F-22s that came in. So then I got reassigned to the F-22 squadron there. there, and that was pretty cool. Got to work on that jet. It was mainly testing the aircraft at that time. They didn't really have it for any missions, so a lot of our stuff was going to Alaska and testing with those pilots up there in Elmendorf, which at that time kind of sparked my interest to go to Alaska and actually be stationed there. So in order to do that, I put in for orders to Korea, which was a year assignment there, remote tour, and I got attached to the F-16 squadron there. So I got to work with the F-16s at the same time, did my full year there, and then got transferred to Alaska for 2 years. And I was attached to a radar unit there. And we managed all the sites in Alaska. There was 17 or 18 different sites across the state. And then we had a couple of stations on the Aleutian Islands, and we had some radar sites in Hawaii and a place called Wake Island, which is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So I got to manage the Wake Island account, got to go there frequently, 2 weeks at a time. From there, I got to travel all over the state of Alaska to the different sites there. So I got to experience all the remote places that you can only fly in some of these spots, or if it's along the coast, you can take a ship or a boat to. So it's very minimal manned places, which was pretty awesome. So I really loved Alaska. I really got to enjoy that place to the full potential I possibly could, being in the military up there. Probably one of my favorite places I've ever lived in the world. And then from there, I went to North Dakota for my last kind of duty assignment. Let me back up. Alaska, that's where I shattered my ankle. So I went through a whole bunch of rehab, surgery, stuff like that, and I got cleared for active duty. So I went to North Dakota at Minot. I got assigned to go to Afghanistan in 2015, where I had a couple of issues with my ankle because of the uneven terrain, kind of took me down, especially being attacked at one point in time, and my ankle locked up and I couldn't really go anywhere, so I had to go get checked out for that, which is funny because the doctor asked me if I could be mobile enough to kind of, spend the rest of my time there without getting sent back earlier, and I said, yeah, it should be all right. So I think I had 2 locked up incidences there, which I got them both checked out, cleared, and then when I came back, they kind of reevaluated and said I wasn't fit for duty anymore. So I got MEB'd, the Medical Evaluation Board. So I got my medical discharge and got my severance package, and then separated and came here to Colorado. So in 2012, when I was stationed in Alaska, I was riding dirt bikes. So that's one of my pastime hobbies. I've been doing that since I was 11, when I got my first dirt bike that my dad got. And in 2012, I was on the local track there, riding around like I normally do. I probably would go, 2 or 3 times a week during the summer. And this particular time, I went out and I got pretty comfortable with the track fairly quickly, and I got a little ballsy at the time, but they had reshaped one of the tabletops there, and the trajectory shot me straight up and kind of took me out rather than kind of a low coast sort of thing, if that made any sense trajectory-wise. And I overshot the landing, and when you overshoot the landing, you kind of land in the flat, and coming, 30 or 40 feet out of the air roughly, it's just a huge impact, and my feet readjusted in the air, so my left foot landed right in the middle, which was perfect, and my right foot caught my toes. So as soon as I hit, that compression of the bike and the force just shot my toes up into my shin, shoved my heel into the ground, and it just compressed and compacted my ankle. So I shattered all the top parts of the foot, shoved the ankle joint up into the tib and fib, broke the bottom part of that, and broke my fibula in half, so to speak. So got rushed to the hospital right away. They did surgery that night. Initially, I had 13 screws and 3 plates with some cadaver bones put in there. They realigned my joint. And then with that, it took about 6 months to go through rehab. And I felt pretty confident that I could snowboard in January, because this happened in July. And I'm not the smartest person in the world, so I went up on my first run. I hit 2 bumps and I went down. So I had to slide on my butt all the way down the hill and go to my truck and say, yeah, this isn't for me right now. So I waited another month because I bought a season pass and I wanted to utilize it as much as I could. So I went back in February and just gutted it out. So from there, in that summer in 2013, I went back out on the track on my bike again, and I overshot another jump because they had switched up the track a little bit, and I landed in the face of the jump, and that had developed a bone spur in my right ankle, and that had broken the bone spur off, which caused me to go back and have another surgery. So they had to go back in and scope it and clean it out, all the buildup in there, and they had found out I have arthritis built up. They cleaned out all that, and then another 6 months of rehab after that. So, but that was the last time I really had my last surgery on the ankle, and then, yeah, from there, I did rehab for a while, and I got to a point where they said they couldn't do anything for me anymore. So I was like, all right. So they told me I would always have a limp. I would never be able to run fully, and that I shouldn't lift any weights and kind of take it easy with the ankle for the rest of my life. 2014 rolled around, and I had a friend who really got me to try CrossFit at that time. He's like, oh, everything's scalable. We can work with you. And he also told me about Kelly Starrett at that time too. So I started learning about mobilizing my ankle and kind of started working from there and trying to get my range of motion back, because that's where physical therapists in the military kind of stopped working with me. So I had to find my own way to work back, and it took quite a bit of time. I would say 2 years just to get to a point where I could squat with some decent weight on my back. But yeah, it took a while. But every day, consistency, working with banded distractions, squatting every day really helped. And then I also noticed just staying mobile and moving every day in that squat position really helped out my ankle a lot, because I noticed if I took like a week off to travel or whatever, my ankle would start locking up. And then I noticed if I would squat and kind of keep it loose and mobile, I wouldn't have those issues anymore. So that kind of triggered a response into me that I really need to focus on like doing my own rehab and seeing what I can do for it. And then I got the whole mindset of I need to prove these doctors wrong, you know. So that's where this whole fitness journey really started for me. Like being in the military, of course, you're in a fitness mindset, like running and push-ups and sit-ups and all that stuff. You go to the gym and you kind of do that bodybuilding type training, but I never had really any kind of guidance. So I would say for me, CrossFit really showed me that and kind of made me a better athlete, even with a disability at that time, and I loved it. I ate it up. I think I did a couple of workouts just to get used to it, but my first real workout that I consider, I did Murph without a weight vest. And I also did it on a rower instead of running. So that kind of like told me I could do this. And that's where like rowing for me was the new running. And it really got my cardio up, really helped with my ankle mobility, just the movement of that, no impact. And I thought that was the greatest thing. I didn't even know about rowing until I started doing CrossFit. So all these new movements and stuff like that, ideas about movement and stuff like that really kind of shaped the way I thought about fitness. So that's what I really loved about CrossFit at that time. So of course, finding out that I could row instead of run, and then also doing like lunging and stuff like that, where I could start to utilize my ankle a little bit more and more through these workouts. I found that my ankle stability started to increase, the mobility, doing the banded stuff every day really kind of helped it out. And when I got stationed in Minot, I started to get a little bit more ballsy with my movement. So doing like box jumps really kind of changed my idea of the impact to it. I started to be able to do those, and it hurt less and less each time I did it. Of course, I didn't start out at a 24-inch or 20-inch box. Like it was a smaller, like just plates, 45-pound plates, feeling that. And once I started to get used to that, I started to go out and jog a little bit, like a limp jog. And I noticed that we used to run around the building, and if I could get through just one lap without any pain, then maybe I could go a little bit longer. And what I would do is each lap, I would try to go a little bit, and once it started to hurt, that pain, then I would stop and walk, and I would kind of stretch it out. And I kind of built myself up that way. I know there was one day in particular where I did like 2 or 3 laps, and the coach at the time, Jared, which really awesome coach, really loved that guy. He showed me a lot and kind of pushed me. I talked with him a little bit, and I wanted to see like if I could really run. And we set up a little course in the back parking lot area, and he timed me, and I tried a full sprint, and it was a short distance, but getting through that full sprint was like this huge epiphany for me, like I can do this. It did hurt a little bit, but not as bad as I thought. And of course, working that mobility and flexibility, I started to run more and more. Not so much at a sprint, but a light jog. And a light jog turned into a heavy breathing sort of run. And then I got to the point where I did it with a vest, a 20-pound vest. And I felt like I could really run. But that still took a long time to get through, maybe 2 or 3 years of just on and off running. After I got out of the military and coming here to Colorado, I felt pretty comfortable running in the back on the dirt trails and stuff like that. And then I started looking more and more to running shoes, and I found that a thicker cushion running style shoe was a little bit better. So the soft dirt in the back on the trails back there really helped me out. And then once I got into that mindset of doing like 800s with no issue, I had a friend that I was with in Afghanistan who encouraged me to try a Spartan race with him. And that's when I talked with Brian, and he really gave me a program to start doing the Spartan race, kind of training for that. And then I did my first one in Florida. This was kind of dumb too. I did a 13.2 mile Spartan race for my first one, and then the next day I turned around and did a 5-mile one in December in the mud, in the water, and it was miserable. My feet were blistering up, my body was sore, but I was extremely proud of myself that I gutted my way through there, and my running was able to keep up with that. So, and then from there, it took off, just running more and more. And then I did another 2 Spartan races back to back down in Colorado Springs. I did a 10-miler there and a 5-mile the next day. And then I did the ultimate one. I did a beast up Breckenridge. So I ran up the mountain and ran down the 4,000 feet of elevation. There was 13 obstacles, and I ran the whole time on that one. And that one, after that, I was like, I'm satisfied. I've done all the running I want to. And plus, running started to take a toll on my whole body, not just my ankle. So it was time to switch it up a little bit. But I think I proved the doctors wrong, saying that I couldn't run anymore. And then now it was time to like get into lifting and start moving some real weight, at least for me in a disabled kind of physical presence. So after satisfying my running needs and proving the doctors wrong, I got into the more lifting mindset. Like I really wanted to lose or start moving weight. I've always since starting CrossFit, I've always had the mindset of lifting weight. I've always enjoyed it, but I really got into Olympic weightlifting after being a part of this culture and how heavy it is here. And speaking with Brian, he gave me a lot of reasons why to do it. And I did my first Olympic program at that time, kind of getting into that, kind of moving. First, everything was power movements, so power snatches, power cleans. And my new goal for starting that was I wanted to do a full squat clean, and I wanted to do a full squat snatch. So that was my goal starting the weightlifting project. And after a while, I got further and further into the squat, and the first time I did my first squat clean, it wasn't that great, but I felt accomplished, especially with the snatch. Of course, I think the first time I did that was an empty barbell and adding weight each time. Like those were my goals. And then I finally set some numbers to hit, and I finally hit those in a full squat snatch and a full squat clean. So those were my big milestone markers, and then building from there was extremely gratifying. Yeah, and then from there I've been trying. My whole goal now is to always try new things, like kind of mix it up. I don't want to get stagnant. I want to see what my body can do and push to those limits. So my last program I just did, I did the Thunder Bros hypertrophy training. Of course, it's mindless, tedious, just 8 sets of 8, 30-second rest in between with the 3-second eccentric descent. But I really enjoyed that. And I noticed like I got a little bit more defined. I shed a little bit more fat, but my strength numbers kind of went down. So my new goal now is to get back into that strength cycle. But going through all these different cycles and trying these different things really shaped my mindset. One, I'm always the person that says, if you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to prove you wrong. So that was initially my goal for doing all this, was to get to a point where I could say, you don't know what you're talking about the doctors, things like that. And now it's like, now it's just, it calms me, it relaxes me, it puts me in a calm state. I just love it. Like, I can't get enough of it. It's like my form of meditation, so to speak. So, and then also the consistency. There's something about doing this every day where it just like amplifies the rest of your life. Like if you can go in here and gut it out and it's super difficult, everything else in your life just gets turned down. Like nothing really phases you, right? So that's what it is for me, is just the benefits of mental health and then also physical health, which all coexists, right? You can't have one without the other, in my opinion. And then you add nutrition on top of that and it's just like mind-blowing. So after getting out of the military, I went back to college for my nutrition and dietetics degree. And where that stems from is when I shattered my ankle back in 2012, I wanted to get back to snowboarding, skateboarding, and riding dirt bikes as quickly as possible. And I started researching, like, what could you do to really help bone growth so it could fuse back together stronger? And at the same time, my dad, he owns a Ducati servicing shop and he has a race team, and he had a rider who did the identical brakes that I had, but he did it on both legs right before I did it. And so luckily I had him to kind of coach me through this. And he's like, just get on a stationary bike and ride. Even if you're in a cast, just get on the bike and ride. And I started learning that just doing that motion kind of built up the muscles around the bone, and it kind of acted as a natural cast. So that kind of helped me get out of the cast a little bit quicker. But also I researched a little bit more that blood circulation, stimulating bone growth, getting the new blood down there, and then also eating like dark fruits at the time, like blueberries and stuff like that, enriched the blood and helped bone growth, calcium and all that stuff, where you can get it from different foods. At that time, I also noticed that I was kind of hooked on medication, so Percocet and Vicodin and stuff like that, and I didn't want to be on that. I didn't like the way it made me feel. I was sleeping all day and it was just horrible. So I needed to find a healthy alternative, so I really dove into nutrition at that time, and that kind of just grew. I went down the rabbit hole with food, and from that time on, I knew I wanted to do something with food and nutrition. The more and more I learned, it became a passion. So I knew once I got out, I was going to go to school for nutrition and dietetics. And we found a really good program here at the Metro, downtown MSU. And I really enjoy their program and their teachers and stuff like that. I really learned a lot. So now I've been able to apply that as being a nutrition coach here at Elevated Kinetics. So. Initially, it was very superficial. So when I wanted to coach, I approached Brian and I said, hey, what can I do to get a key and coach at the gym? Because I just wanted to lift every day without worrying about anything, right? That was my first thought. And we talked about it, and I got my L1 through CrossFit, and I was ready to go. And I didn't really have any kind of direction at that time. I just wanted to learn and help people out, but it didn't dawn on me like the connection until one day. There was one day in particular that will always stay with me, and it still gives me goosebumps even while I'm talking right now. Like, this is why I really enjoy coaching. We had a member at that time, Becky, who I was coaching the afternoon class, and she told me, after class of course, but she was sitting in her car and she was debating on whether or not to come in. She had a really hard day at work and she was just feeling depressed and low, and she didn't want to be around anybody, but she forced herself to walk through the door. And when she did, of course we gave her greetings, we gave her high fives when she came in, and that day we were doing deadlifts, and I think we were setting, I don't know if it was a max or a 5-rep max at the time, but she had set, if I remember correctly, she had set a PR maybe 2 weeks before that, or some sort, trying to learn through it, doing her elements training class. And when we got her into class, just a group of the people that were in there and then myself, we just encouraged her to keep going, because she would hit numbers so easy. She was moving so fluidly, and it was like, add more weight, you got much more in the tank. Your form isn't breaking down, like you can do so much more. And we got, I think, if I remember correctly, like a 15 or a 20-pound PR increase from her weight before, and she was ecstatic. Like, we gave her high fives, she was smiles, like she just brightened up her day. And this is where it got me, as when everybody was leaving, she was kind of one of the last people to leave, and she looked at me and she goes, "I just want to thank you." And I said, "For what?" I was like, "You did awesome today. That was all you." And she goes, "No." And this is where she told me, like, I was sitting in my car and I was extremely depressed and I didn't want to come in. And because I forced myself, like, you changed my whole day. Like, and I almost like came into tears in that moment. Like, it was so powerful that I actually changed somebody's life for the better. And that will always resonate with me, that I gave somebody, you know, a better quality of life in that moment when they were feeling the worst they could possibly feel. And she left with smiles. Her head was high. She was laughing. And in that moment, I knew this was for me. Like, I want to get back to the human culture, the human nature. And this is the way I'm going to do it, because that was the most powerful moment I think I've had in my adult life, was with her. And she, I don't know if she'll ever understand this, but she changed the way I view coaching. And that's how I do it every day. It's like, I'm here to make everybody's life a little bit better, whether they have a hard day at work and they come in at the end of the day, or like when they come in the morning and I'm the first person they see. Like, I do it for everybody because this culture is so powerful. And we're so lost in our day-to-day lives and our communities at our 9-to-5 jobs, sitting in our cubicles, and we just kind of wonder why. But when you can create an atmosphere like this and a tribal community, and you can make people's lives better just by feeding off each other, like, that's a powerful thing. And to me, this facility here is what will change our culture and our society as a whole. Talking about nutrition and fitness and bringing this all together and having these one-on-one connections, to me, that's the most powerful thing I can give back, because it gives me a better quality of life as a human. So coaching to me is everything, and I don't want to do anything else. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life, and I'm extremely passionate about it, and I love every minute of it, because every day since that day I had with Becky is exact same. You know, like, I don't want to lose that feeling, and I feel like I've lost my, you know, path in life if I don't have this to give back to people and reciprocate. It's all give and take. Like everybody in our gym, in our community, gives me so much, and I just reflect that back with love, and it's so phenomenal. And I can't imagine my life without it.